Most prophecy is vague on purpose. Someday, in the last days, when the time is right. Easy to claim, impossible to check. But there is one prophecy in the Hebrew Bible that does something almost no other prophecy dares to do. It puts a number on the page. Sometime around the 6th century before Christ, the book of Daniel records an angelic message that doesn't say someday. It says 70 weeks, a specific count with a specific starting gun, running to a specific arrival. A prophecy you could, in principle, take a calendar to and check. And for the last 2 centuries, people have done exactly that. They've taken the starting point Daniel names, run the count forward, and landed on a date. And the date a Scotland Yard investigator arrived at, working it like a case file in 1894, fell in the same week Jesus rode into Jerusalem. That's the claim. It's one of the most famous calculations in the history of biblical interpretation. So today we're going to do what this channel does. We're going to walk the math, and then we're going to stress test it honestly. Because the real story is more interesting than either the people who treat it as airtight proof or the people who wave it away. Welcome back to Scripture Underground. This one's an Is It True? We're taking a specific, checkable prophetic claim, walking the actual calculation, and then doing the part most videos skip, testing where it's solid and where it isn't. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the series. Let's go. First, the passage. The setting matters. Daniel is an old man living in exile in Babylon, decades after Jerusalem was destroyed. He's reading the prophet Jeremiah, who had said the exile would last 70 years, and Daniel realizes that 70 years is almost up, so he prays. And in the middle of the prayer, the angel Gabriel arrives with an answer that is far bigger than the question. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for guilt, to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to anoint the most holy place. Now the first thing to clear up is that word, weeks. In Hebrew, it's Shavua. Shavua just means a 7, a unit of 7. It can be 7 days, an ordinary week. But in this context, read against the 70 years Daniel was just praying about. The long interpretive tradition takes these as sevens of years. 70 sevens of years, 70 times 7, 490 years. And then Gabriel does something unusual. He breaks the 490 years into pieces and tells Daniel where the clock starts. From the going out of the word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, until an anointed one, a prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 7 plus 62, 69 weeks, 69 sevens of years, 483 years, from a starting command to the arrival of an anointed one. The Hebrew word for anointed one there is Mashiach, Messiah. So the structure of the claim is now on the table. Find the starting command, count forward 483 years, and you should arrive at the Messiah, which raises the only question that matters next. When does the clock start? Here's the first place this gets genuinely tricky, and I want to be honest about it because the answer you choose here changes everything downstream. The text says the count begins with the word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. The problem is that the Old Testament records more than one royal decree involving Jerusalem, issued by different Persian kings in different years. There's a decree under Cyrus, decrees under Artaxerxes, and scholars genuinely disagree about which one Gabriel means. 2 are the serious contenders. One was issued around 458 BC. The other, the decree given to Nehemiah to rebuild the city and its walls, around 444 BC. And watch what happens, because this is the honest part. If you start the 483-year count from the 458 BC decree, you land in the mid-20s AD, right around the time Jesus began his public ministry. If you start from the 444 BC decree, you land in the early 30s AD, right around the triumphal entry and the crucifixion. Stop and notice something. Those are 2 different start dates, giving 2 different end dates, and both of them land on a major moment in the life of Jesus. That's either a remarkable feature of the prophecy or a warning sign that the target is broad enough to be hit more than one way. We're going to come back to that tension because it's the crux of the whole thing. But first, let's walk the most famous version of the calculation all the way through, the one that aims at the triumphal entry to the day. Because the precision of it is genuinely striking, and you can't evaluate it until you've seen it. The man who made this calculation famous was Sir Robert Anderson, head of the Criminal Investigation Department at Scotland Yard, who worked the prophecy in his spare time like a case. He published it in 1894 in a book called The Coming Prince, and a Bible scholar named Harold Hoehner later reworked it with more precise astronomy and arrived at almost the same place. Here's how it goes. Start with the decree to Nehemiah around 444 BC. Now you need the length of the count, 483 years. But Anderson made one crucial move here, and it's both the clever part and, as we'll see, the contested part. He argued that the biblical prophetic year is 360 days, not 365. There's a case for this. Several places in Scripture seem to count years as 12 30-day months. So Anderson multiplied 483 years times 360 days, 173,880 days. That's the total span the prophecy is describing in his reading. Then he converted that pile of days back onto our actual solar calendar, accounting for the fact that our years are about 365 and a quarter days long. And when he counted 173,880 days forward from the decree, he landed on a date in the spring, a date that fell in the very week of Passover, in the year Jesus entered Jerusalem on a donkey. Which connects to one more thread. Centuries before Daniel, the prophet Zechariah had written, "Your king comes to you, humble, riding on a donkey." The image the crowds reenacted on Palm Sunday. So the claim, fully assembled, is this. A 6th century BC prophecy gives a count. The count, run forward, lands on a specific week. And that week is the week a man rode into Jerusalem on a donkey while crowds shouted that their king had come. It is, on its face, stunning, which is exactly why we now have to do the hard part. Here's where this channel parts ways with how this prophecy usually gets preached, because it usually gets preached as a closed case, exact to the day, no room for doubt. And that's not honest. There are real pressure points. Let's name them. Start with the start date. It's a choice. We saw it already. There are multiple decrees, and the calculation only lands on the triumphal entry if you pick the 444 BC one. Pick the 458 BC decree, and you land on the start of Jesus' ministry instead. Now, a defender will say both landing on Jesus is the point. A skeptic will say a target you can hit from two different starting lines is a target that's too wide to prove anything. Both of those are fair responses. The honest position is that the start date is assumed, not given. Then there's the 360-day prophetic year, itself an interpretive move. It has textual support, and it's not invented out of nowhere, but it's a choice that makes the math land precisely. Use ordinary 365-day years and the numbers shift. The to-the-day precision depends on the 360-day assumption being correct. And even the careful versions disagree with each other. Anderson placed the cutting off in 32 AD. Hoehner, using nearly the same method with better astronomy, landed on 33 AD. When two careful proponents using the same approach come out a year apart, exact to the day is overselling it. And here's the deepest one. Some scholars point out that Daniel's original audience, reading this in exile, knew nothing about Artaxerxes or Nehemiah. Neither had been born yet. The only decree on the horizon for those first readers was the one associated with Cyrus. So a strictly historical reading asks, would the people who first received this prophecy have counted the way Anderson did? Probably not. That doesn't sink the messianic reading, but it means the precise calculation is a later lens, applied looking backward, not something the text obviously handed its first audience. And there's a whole interpretive tradition. Not skeptics, but serious Christians, who read the 70 weeks as already fulfilled in the 1st century, without any of this date math machinery at all. So is the calculation fake? No. Is it proof? Also no. What it actually is more interesting than either. Under one reasonable set of assumptions, a specific decree, a 360-day year, the triumphal entry as the target, the numbers converge with genuinely arresting closeness on the right window of history. Vary the assumptions and the precision loosens, though the count still lands in the right era either way. So let's answer the question the title asked. Is it true? Here's the part that survives every pressure test. Strip away the to-the-day precision, drop the contested 360-day year, refuse to pick a favorite decree, and you are still left with a document, written centuries before Jesus, that says this: there is a count. It runs from a command to rebuild Jerusalem. At the end of it, an anointed one arrives. And then, Daniel 9:26, that anointed one is cut off, killed. And after that, the city and the sanctuary are destroyed. You don't need Anderson's calendar for that to be remarkable. A pre-Christian Hebrew text anticipates a Messiah who arrives in a specific window of history, is killed, and is followed by the destruction of Jerusalem, which happened in 70 AD. The era is right. The sequence is right. The fate of the Messiah, cut off, not crowned, runs against everything that era expected. The exact to-the-day version is a fascinating, defensible, but assumption-dependent reading. The broad shape of the prophecy needs no assumptions at all. And honestly, the broad shape is the more impressive claim. It just doesn't fit on a thumbnail. A prophecy that put a number on the page invites you to check it, and checking it honestly is better than either worshiping the math or dismissing it. The precise date is a maybe. The shape of the thing, a counted arrival, an anointed one cut off, a city destroyed, is hard to wave away. Read Daniel 9 slowly, with a calendar in one hand and a healthy skepticism in the other. That's the only way to read a prophecy that dares you to do the math. If this opened up Daniel 9 for you, hit like so more people see it, subscribe for the rest of the series, and tell me in the comments, does the broad version or the to-the-day version land harder for you? I'll see you in the next one. Until next time.